Ladies and gentlemen, independent Americans around the country and around the world, we have a very special guest, a returning champion after a long wait and a lot of change in the world. I am very happy, humbled, and honored to bring back on the program the great and powerful, now Secretary Pete Buttigieg is back on the show. Welcome back, sir. Great to have you.
Thanks. Good to be back with you.
So last time we talked, we were at the Classic Car Club in New York in December 2019. You came flying in. There had been a shooting across the river. It was a dramatic time. You were on top of the presidential race. Now a lot has changed. You are in the cabinet. You've got a really key role, and you're a dad. So thank you for making the time come back on. And I just want to start by welcoming you and ask you the same question I ask everybody. Where are you and how are you?
So I'm doing well. I'm on the road at the moment. Hopefully by the time my head hits the pillow, I'll be where my children and husband are in Michigan. And I'm doing great. I have the best job in the federal government. I think, the opportunity right now to be literally building the future is about as exciting as it gets. Not that it isn't demanding, but there's never been a better moment to be Secretary of Transportation. Transportation is dealing with some of the toughest challenges, certainly in the kind of modern post-war era, the shockwaves from the pandemic that are affecting everything from container shipping to airline schedules. But also, we've never had these kinds of tools to work with to make our roads and ports and trains and transit and airports and everything else better. So I got a great team, and we're pushing hard.
You do, and you are. I'm excited to get into infrastructure. I want to talk about Afghanistan a bit. I want to talk about the political landscape and the tone that you continue to bring. I want to talk about the unique role you're in as Transportation Secretary, because you're kind of like Santa Claus now. Now that the bill is passed, you get to go around the country and deliver these amazing infrastructure presents to the country. But I want to start with the PACT Act, if I can. It's an issue that I think is really important to veterans. I believe outside of the Secretary of Defense, you're the only veteran in the cabinet. And that is significant. So many of these issues are personal for you in ways they aren't for other folks in Washington. Historic victory for our whole community. Just want to get your reactions to the passage of the PACT Act and also maybe the process, which I think frustrated us so much at times, and there was so much ridiculous obstructionism at the end. And at the same time, I think it showed us hope. It was kind of the opposite of January 6th. You had folks organizing outside the Capitol in good ways and positive ways and legal ways. So, from your unique vantage point, Mr. Secretary, what's your reaction to the passage of the PACT Act?
This is really personal, and this is really important. And every generation has had things that they come home with, every generation of veterans from these conflicts. And for the post 9/11 generation, burn pit exposure is clearly a big part of that. I remember watching the president raise this in the State of the Union address. It was exciting, and you remember he raised it as an example of something that people from both parties ought to be able to work on. And we saw that as recently as June. Then something ugly happened. We saw this partisan spite come in. A bunch of Republicans who had just voted for it in the Senate turned around and voted against it. But as you say, there's also something very poetic about what happened next, where you had veterans day and night on the steps of the Capitol, really just using the moral authority that they rightly have to demand that Congress do better. And at a time when people have been very disappointed in Washington for a number of reasons, disappointed in Congress for a number of reasons, this showed that you can, in fact, make that institution responsive to the people in a way that I think is a source of great encouragement and great hope, not just for those veterans who will get benefits that they deserve and need, but also for a country that needs to see more examples of that. I thought we had one good example of good bipartisan work with the bipartisan infrastructure law that I worked on in this job. Now another one advancing for the president's signature when it comes to this burn pit legislation, and it is a testament to the way that so many groups got out there and just said, "Hey, this is the right thing to do," and I think really did shame some some senators who managed to be on all three sides of the issue. To finally suck it up and do the right thing.
Well, we also had the strategic weapon that is Jon Stewart, who might be maybe the only person in politics more popular than you and a couple other people. But it also happened, there's this juxtaposition in our existence as veterans and I think as citizens all the time where we're getting hit from both sides. It's happening the same week, 1 year, almost to the day of the withdrawal from Afghanistan. I know you're in the cabinet. I know you can't get into stuff on foreign policy and national defense as much as you used to when you were a candidate. But again, you still have a really unique vantage point. And I think as inspiring as the PAC Act was, the Afghanistan withdrawal was really crushing for so many people in our community. And now a year later, even with the Zawahiri hit, it feels like Afghanistan is Forgotistan. So can you also just, again, as an Afghanistan veteran, as the only veteran in the cabinet outside the SecDef, what are your thoughts and maybe also your message to fellow veterans who maybe felt betrayed by that withdrawal and felt like it was a real disappointing way for us to end such an agonizing commitment?
I think this is a moment when, just as was happening a year ago, a lot of us are going to be checking in on each other, checking in on folks from our units that we were out there with, checking in on people that we served with, because it does bring back so much. The other thing, though, about America forgetting is that's a process that was underway long before the withdrawal. I remember when I was getting mobilized in 2014, people saying, "Wait a minute, how are you getting deployed? I thought we were out of there." And I remember leaving at the end of my deployment in 2014, thinking I was one of the very last ones turning out the lights, only to be finding myself debating what next for Afghanistan on a debate stage years and years later. So I think we as a country need to come to terms with that entire engagement. And clearly the Zawahiri hit, which is, by the way, an extraordinary testament to our intelligence community and as the president said, an indication that no matter how long it takes, we will see to it that there is justice for people who perpetrated 9/11. But I was just with interns at the Department of Transportation yesterday who were not alive when 9/11 happened. And I think whenever you have a moment like this or an anniversary like this, it has all of us stepping back and realizing that the country still has an unresolved relationship to everything that has happened in the last 20 years.
We spent 20 years investing in the infrastructure of Afghanistan. That ended, and now we've got this mammoth historic infrastructure investment here in the U.S. For a long time, I used the hashtag "Our infrastructure sucks." So I am so happy, if you weren't going to be VA secretary and you weren't going to be, in the defense world, I think having you in this role is really key. I think especially for those of us that are not Democrats, that we're looking to you to build bridges and to bring people together and keep that same message of hope and inspiration. And I really think, the Democrats deserve credit for this because it provides so much hope. And I want to ask you a part of this. Obviously, there's been a focus on veterans, on things like truck driving and other translatable skills, things they did in Afghanistan and Iraq, and now they can do at home. But I want to ask you about infrastructure from a different standpoint, building on that. How is this infrastructure investment going to help our national security? Because I think that's a part of this that most people aren't tracking on, they're not fully understanding, and maybe one of those tremendous long-term impacts of the infrastructure bill. So how does this help our national security at a time when it feels like we're being hit from the outside and from within?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I'll answer it this way. Eisenhower was the last president to oversee this level of investment in our infrastructure. And one of the reasons Eisenhower saw to the interstate highway system was he understood, as we entered the next chapter of the Cold War, that America had to be a country that was connected. And by the way, if you look at what Transcom does, so much of what it takes to get equipment, material, and people to where they need to be is through our civilian transportation systems, whether we're talking about rail, whether we're talking about shipping, whether we're talking about airports, roads, all of it. And so there is a direct nexus to this. So someone I've been in touch with a lot lately who has reminded me of how important this is my counterpart in Ukraine, the Ukrainian infrastructure minister, who has told me about and shown me pictures of examples of everything from the heroic role of the railway workers who have kept that system running even when being directly attacked, to how they've been able to land aircraft on their highways. Just incredible things going on out there. But also a reminder of how your civilian transportation networks are so important to national security. So there's the direct national security consequence. And then there's the indirect piece, right, which is just in terms of strategic positioning, in terms of competitiveness, in terms of economic security. You need to, you look at the rate of investment in China. That is not because the Chinese Communist Party's top echelons is full of infrastructure nerds like me. It is because they understand in a very hard-edged, raw power sense why those kinds of investments in having good roads and fast trains, everything else that goes with it, make you more competitive in the 21st century.
You know, I think there's a 110-year-old bridge down the road from my house that's now under construction. And I'm seeing the impact of this investment every day. Anyone, especially I think in rural areas and suburban areas, and now in urban areas, you're seeing it. I want to ask you another part of this that I think is underappreciated. Our country is so divided, and there are people, including many that we served with, that are teetering on the edge of extremism. They're joining the Oath Keepers. They're feeling like the government doesn't include them. They're fighting the government. Does this, I think this does help us actually battle extremism. In the same way you couldn't kill everybody in Iraq and Afghanistan, but if you created jobs and opportunities in the road to the future, you could battle extremism. So can you pull that apart? Do you see this as having a real impact on people who would otherwise be politically totally opposed to you and the president, and maybe just opposed to even government in general once it comes to jobs and investment in their own community?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important way to think about it. Having this knockdown, drag out wrestling match, grappling with each other, right on the edge of a cliff. So much so that in the course of the wrestling, sometimes a foot or an arm goes over the cliff. And part of what we can do just by delivering, just by taking care of the basics, is we're still going to have ferocious arguments as a country, but we can move that wrestling match 6 feet away from the cliff face and have it there, and not have the risk of all of us tumbling right over it. I use that metaphor in my mind because I think about how, especially for a younger generation that has witnessed mostly policy failure over their adult lifetimes, to see things working will help build trust. Us delivering just the basics, I think, is a very important part of how you establish trust in our country, trust in the ability of good government to get things done. Not the argument over how big or how small, but just can it be good government, and trust in our democratic society that is badly needed and part of the antidote to the terrifying forms of extremism that we saw expressed most extremely on January 6th, but in so many ways.
Well, and it's also tone. And I think that's part of what you have uniquely captured the attention of the world with, is your unique tone, your personality, your approach, your family. You are the next generation of political leadership in America, and you have risen so rapidly. I want to ask you about that because as an independent, I look across the landscape. We don't see people who appeal to us. It looks now like Biden may not run. Right. And for a long time, I think we talked about this the last time you were on the show, you seemed like the heir apparent to the moderate side of the Democratic Party. If he doesn't run, will you run for president again?
I don't view myself as the heir to anything. I view myself as a guy with a job to do right now. And the president has trusted me with the responsibility of seeking to deliver his vision. And deliver on this funding. I mean, Congress gave us, this administration, more than $1 trillion to work with. About half of that's transportation, and I've got more than, I know this sounds like the answer I'm supposed to give, but it's also true. I've got my hands full with this day job that is going to take everything I've got. It's going to test the productive capacity of this country, and the campaign side is just not on my mind. My understanding and expectation is the president will run again. I'm looking forward to supporting him. But campaigns and elections is not where most of my energy is going right now.
And that's what I expect you to say. But I also know that we're all looking at what could be, maybe an even more divisive election than last time. If Biden doesn't run, and hypothetically it's Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump, we're going to be looking for third-party voices. There's this movement from Andrew Yang. Can I ask you your analysis of where independents can go right now. Andrew Yang's got this new party. You have been kind of a post-partisan voice. What's your landscape on the viability or avenues for people who are independent, unaffiliated, not even third party, but just folks who say none of the above, who are often the people who you appeal to?
Look, I think a lot of it is coming back to the things that we want, not because we belong to a certain party or ideology, but because they just make sense. And I think that's true of the stuff I get to work on every day around infrastructure. I think certain things that became partisan or political don't have to be, from public health to fighting the climate challenge. And I think the more we focus on that, the more we focus on the ideas and the results, the better off we're going to be. And I do think there are a lot of people who feel a little bit homeless when they're looking at the current party alignments. But that's exactly why we need to organize ourselves and our political sides around the ideas and the results we want to get, not the other way around. And I think when you do that, I mean, it meant the world to me to be able to see people kind of cross over in campaigns that I've been part of in the past, political or policy wise in this administration. It's been exciting to see Republicans cross over and join Democrats to get the infrastructure law done. It's a good idea because even some of the ones who voted against it are writing me letters now asking for funding. And we're not going to be political in where the funding goes. We're going to send it to where it's needed. And so I do think there's I'm not minimizing just how ugly some of the divisions are right now, and so how frightening some of the extremism is right now. But I do think we can get past it because most of the people I know, whether they belong to the same political party as me or not, are just ready to get stuff done.
Well, we need leaders who can get stuff done. You've been a leader who does that. Since last time I spoke to you, you were on track to be president, and if you were elected president, you would have been one of the first presidents in a long time who wasn't a parent. That has changed now. So how has being a dad changed your leadership?
I mean, it changes everything. First of all, it's very humbling because the two most important people in my life now, these 1-year-old, soon to be 1-year-old twins, don't know or care what my day job is. They don't care if I'm supposed to be at the White House after breakfast. They need to eat, and they just kind of reorient your entire way of thinking about the world. The biggest thing is they change your relationship to the future because you're not just raising humans that you love. You're on some level preparing your replacements in this world, and you think about that in terms of the values you're demonstrating for them, but also how you're taking care of them. So, all these things I might have believed academically or theoretically about how we as a country need to do a better job supporting parents, supporting kids, and supporting families. Now I feel it at a whole new level, and it's a beautiful thing. It's kicking my ass a lot of the time, but that can be healthy too.
You thought you didn't get sleep before when you were in the military or on a campaign trail. Now it's a whole new level.
I got to tell you, deployment had nothing on this for sleep deprivation. It's really something.
Well, it's important because you continue to be a role model, and I think that's part of what has really attracted so many people beyond partisan lines to you and your leadership and all the work you do. And you're bringing a unique star power to infrastructure, which I think is really important. If we've had any tech challenges during this, I blame it on the need for broadband investment, which is something that you've been trumpeting for a long time. So thank you for bearing the challenges. Two quick fire final questions. I'm going to ask you the question I ask of all our guests to finish, but if you had to choose one before we get to that, trains, planes, automobiles. If you had to pick one, I'm a fan of all of them. I am a huge advocate for rail. It's something that I'm so excited about seeing a real investment in rail here in America. But if you had to pick, I've got two little boys who are obsessed with anything that moves. If you had to pick planes, trains, or automobiles, which is your favorite, Mr. Secretary?
I love them all, but there's something about the magic of flight that just that's what spoke to me when I was a kid, and I think. Just whatever we do as a species, the ability to soar through the air, there's just nothing like it.
Well, that was the easy question. Now, here's the hard one that divides America. You got to pick one. I had Senator Tester on to answer this and everybody else in between. If you had to pick one, pancakes or waffles?
No, pancakes. We go pancakes. The advantage of the waffle, obviously, is the way it can collect the syrup because of the structure of the waffle. By the way, I'll have you know that the majority of institutional waffle irons in cafeterias are made in South Bend, Indiana. Fun fact. But for all of that, the great thing about the pack pan, more things in it. You can put blue, and yes, you could technically do that with a waffle, but it's not the same.
See, I knew I would get a very uniquely, I used to say Mayor Pete, but now Secretary Pete answer. When I asked you the Peeps question 2 years ago, you had a fantastic answer. And on this one, you didn't disappoint as well. But I am grateful for your leadership. Thank you for coming back on the show. Thank you for enduring the check challenges that I know you are working hard to overcome. And thank you for being a helper, for being out there and showing our kids and everyone what's possible, for being a true role model and for being a patriot in the best form of it. We really appreciate all that you're doing, and I can't thank you enough for coming back on the show.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thanks for the kind words, and thanks as always, in particular, for everything you're doing to be a voice for our generation of veterans. It matters more than ever.
Well, we're rooting for you, and I think we said that before, and even now more than ever. Fix the bridges, fix them all. We're rooting for you. Get out there and stay vigilant. We've got your back.
I'm on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I know you got to run.
Yeah, that was fun. Thanks for bearing with us.
Thank you, my friend. I appreciate it so much. Call anytime I can be of help. Thank you.
I sure will. Thank you.